First, I want to say is I'm sorry for hurting you and cheating on you with your best friend. And your best friend is a slut, and I don't like her. She's gross, and I can give a fuck less. This video is like an apology to you. And the girl I'm talking about is Tawny, and I'm trying to get her back to be with me so I can keep her again and for her to give me another chance. Because I'm in love with her, and I love her, and I want her back. So if you'll please be my girlfriend, I'll be really happy.
Victoria Mendoza was the female equivalent of a bad boy, tattooed, rebellious, wild, and willing to break the rules. But while her tough girl persona held a certain appeal to peers, it masked a much, much darker reality. When 17-year-old Tawnee Baird fell for her in 2004, the warning signs were there from the start. But like so many abusive relationships, by the time Tawny wanted out, it was too late. This case examines the shocking chain of events that led to the brutal murder of Tawnee Baird at the age of 21, and the twisted mind of the girl who, after committing the crime, turned to TikTok to build her social media following. Welcome to Fear Files, where we discuss and dissect the most mysterious, terrifying, and mind-bending cases from all over the world. Before we start, we would like to send our thoughts and prayers to the loved ones of each individual who fell victim to the events outlined in this story. Welcome to Salt Lake City, Utah. Nestled in the foothills of the snow-capped Rocky Mountains, Salt Lake City is the religious center of the Mormon faith and is known for its stunning national parks and easily accessible ski resorts. One of the first settlements at Salt Lake was the suburb of Holiday. With its beautiful parks and wide streets, Holiday is a favorite among Salt Lake residents, and for the Bairds, it was the perfect place to raise a family. 17-year-old Tawnee Marie Baird was the quintessential all-American girl, blonde, blue-eyed, with a gorgeous smile that lit up a room. Tawny was a young girl with big dreams. Her childhood and adolescence had been happy and stable. Tawny's mother, Dana, separated from her dad, Casey, when she was just 1 year old, but both were raising Tawny harmoniously in a blended family that was as close as it was extensive. Tawny had 2 sisters and a brother, and when her mother remarried, 2 stepbrothers and a stepfather too. Her nickname was Ladybug. Tawny herself was just awesome, her friend Erin Murphy said. Warm, engaging, and with a playful sense of humor, both boys and girls gravitated to Tawny. She was also determined and ambitious and knew exactly what she wanted for her life. Tawny was going to pursue a singing and songwriting career in the music business. She had the work ethic, the focus, and the musical talent to achieve it. Her best friend Lacey described Tawny as the most loving and loyal of friends, but that loyalty was about to get Tawny into a whole lot of trouble. In June 2010, Tawny was out driving around with friends when a police car pulled them over. Like many teenagers, Tawny and her friends occasionally experimented with alcohol and marijuana. When the police officers searched the car, they found a bong and marijuana in the back seat. Part of Utah's famous Bible Belt, Salt Lake City's laws reflect a strict religious and moral code, and that code was about to alter the course of Tawnee Baird's life forever. The penalty for adult possession of a controlled substance in Utah is a criminal record and prison time. Tawny's friends were all 18. Thinking on her feet, 17-year-old Tawny stepped up and claimed that the bong and weed were hers. Even Tawny was going to get more than just a slap on the wrist, though. She was charged with a Class B misdemeanor and possession of a controlled substance and taken into custody of Child and Family Services, who then placed her in the care of her aunt. She was sentenced to complete 90 days in a youth health treatment facility, juvenile detention. For a girl from the middle-class suburb of Holiday, Juvenile detention was disorienting and downright frightening. Many of the kids in the center were hardened, repeat offenders with long rap sheets of violent and antisocial behavior. Some were gang members with charges related to heroin dealing and knife fights. Her mom remembers Tawny crying and crying during her early days at the center. "I was worried for Tawny," her mother said. "She was a homebody and it scared her to death." But that was about to change, thanks to 17-year-old Victoria Ashley Mendoza. They say opposites attract. A cliché, but one that accurately describes the romantic union that blossomed between Tawnee Baird and the tattooed bad girl Victoria Mendoza. Born to immigrants from Mexico, Victoria was one of the most hardcore kids at the center. Life had not been easy for Victoria. Home life had been filled with conflict. Money was short. Things deteriorated drastically for the family when Victoria's father committed suicide when she was just 10 years old. The family packed into a one-bedroom unit in the crime-afflicted area of Ogden. His death instigated a profound shift in 10-year-old Victoria. She began running away, being truant from school, fighting, and carrying knives. In the years to come, she would be in and out of the juvenile detention system for antisocial behavior. Her juvenile court history became extensive. In the 2 years prior to meeting Tawny, she had 12 bench warrants issued and 8 contempt charges filed against her alone. Whether this was the behavior of a distressed teen or the symptoms of an emerging personality disorder is anyone's guess. But while Victoria was slender and soft-featured, her street-smart, tough girl demeanor and palpable edge of danger gave her a certain allure for teens around her, including Tawnee Baird. Victoria represented everything in society that was anti-establishment and forbidden. And for Tawny, who was vulnerable, Victoria also represented security and protection. Survival in juvenile detention required a set of skills worlds away from suburban holiday, and they were skills that Victoria possessed in abundance. But perhaps what really sealed their bond was music. In Victoria, Tawny found someone who shared her love for creating music, her cousin said. It was around this time that Victoria received a devastating blow. Her mom had been diagnosed with aggressive and terminal breast cancer. Tawny was there to pick up the pieces. It was yet another moment that would cement what would become an intense love affair. When Tawny's mom next came to visit her daughter, there were no more tears. Now there was only talk of her new friend Victoria. While Tawny had previously only dated boys, she now announced to her mom that she was gay. And just as her parents had always done with Tawny, they embraced her new relationship. This unconditional acceptance and respect for Tawny would show itself again and again in her family in the years to come. Tawny was released from the center in August of 2010. For a month, the two wrote each other. "I'll wait for you, I promise," Tawny told Victoria. In one chillingly prophetic letter, Victoria wrote, "Sleep with anyone else but me and I might have to kill you. I mean it. All my love, V." But Victoria was all Tawny could talk about. In September, Tawny and her father went back to the center, this time to pick up Tawny's girlfriend, Victoria. Instead of going home to see her ailing mother, Victoria was going to Tawny's house. Her mom, she said, could wait. Tawny's dad, Casey, was surprised when he saw the girl his daughter had chosen. She was very different to the kind of people she normally hung around. And there was something about Victoria that made him uneasy, he said. But he tried not to judge. He felt it was important that he accept his daughter's choice and support their relationship. Tawny's friends also found the relationship surprising, but put their feelings to one side. Victoria was quickly accepted by both Tawny's family and social circle. But she had plenty of questions about boys. Victoria wanted to know which boys Tawny had slept with. Still, social media pictures show the two going to parties, looking glam and cool and crazy in love. And the two, by all appearances, were made for each other. They seemed to have a real connection, Tawny's best friend Lacey Black said. Victoria then took Tawny back to her mother's house in Ogden, 30 miles north of Salt Lake City. The joke in Salt Lake was that nothing good ever happens in Ogden, Tawny's cousin said. And indeed, the town had issues with gangs, crime, and drugs. While in Ogden, Victoria took Tawny out to meet her friends. They were wild and liked to party, a very different crowd to the one Tawny was used to, and Tawny realized that Victoria was carrying a knife around with her. Victoria, as it turned out, collected knives. It was just a hobby, she said. Victoria and Tawny began to spend every moment together, but the first signs of trouble began to show. Tawnee Baird later said that he sensed the jealousy and insecurity in Victoria from early on. By contrast, Tawny was self-assured and trusting. She was also playful and affectionate with friends, male and female. For Victoria, this was a triggering combination. Boys in particular were a threat. Jealous rages would often ruin a night out. If Tawny received a message from a male friend innocently suggesting they catch up, Victoria would accuse Tawny of cheating or question the boy's motives. Some of Tawny's friends began to drift away. Her closest friends, including Lacey, chose to befriend Victoria rather than losing Tawny. But Lacey quickly started to think of Victoria as someone you didn't want to anger. She had a short fuse, she said. In June of 2012, Victoria's mom passed away. Tawny's parents were in the apartment supporting Victoria through the ordeal. It hit Victoria hard. By now, the girls had been together for 2 years. Victoria had no parents and no job. The Bairds invited Victoria to live with them for as long as she needed to. She found a new family within Tawny's family. Tawny's father, Casey, said that by this time he almost considered her his other daughter. Dana opened her arms and heart to Victoria, allowing her to call her mom. Their relationship had always been one of opposites attract, but now those differences began to seriously tear at the fabric of their relationship. Victoria was infuriated by the attention Tawny received from both boys and girls. She was the only one who couldn't see that Tawny was devoted to her alone. And so it was ironic that it was Victoria who cheated on Tawny and with one of Tawny's female friends. It was an obvious and spiteful attempt at revenge, but it backfired. The pair split up. Tawny was firm about not taking Victoria back. She began trying to move on. Victoria tried to reach out to Tawny without success, and so she posted a lengthy apology video on YouTube for all their friends to see. In the rambling video, Victoria addresses both her audience and Tawny. Her language is revealing and ominous. She wanted Tawny to belong to her again, she said. She couldn't let Tawny walk away free. She wanted her to be her girlfriend again. Victoria's ownership over Tawny is clear, as is the focus of her concern, herself and her needs. She also denigrated the friend she cheated with, but somehow kept herself exempt from the same criticisms. Her friends thought it was strange that she'd broadcast it to everyone. Tawny found it endearing and romantic. Tawny's friends and family were shocked when she took Victoria back. I'm pissed off at myself for not separating those two. I knew deep down in my soul that there was something wrong, said Baird's father, Casey. Mendoza was a lost little girl. Often female abusers slip under the radar more easily than males. This seems to be the case with Victoria. Family members described seeing Tawny and Victoria engaged in heated fights that would sometimes turn physical. Attempts were made to intervene, but the pair would reconcile and put on a convincing show of love and unity. For the 2 years the girls lived under Dana's roof, Tawny's mother was unaware of the escalating abuse. After all, they had raised a strong girl with a healthy self-esteem. As for Victoria, she was highly skilled as an actress, liar, and manipulator. Only once Tawny's dad recalls having to get between the girls when they were fighting at his house. Behind the scenes, though, Things were unraveling. The theme that cropped up over and over again was Victoria's paranoia that Tawny would return to liking guys and either leave her or cheat on her. And yet, according to Tawny's close friends, the more they fought, the more codependent they became on one another. The pair worked hard to put up a good front, but the toxic side of their relationship was becoming harder to disguise. After one violent fight, Tawny confided in Lacey that she thought Victoria was going to kill her. Meanwhile, Dana could see that the relationship was not healthy. Victoria didn't want Tawny away from her for even a moment, Dana said. They were spending too much time together. They were fighting all the time. And the facade was about to collapse completely. After an innocent text from a male friend, Victoria sucker-punched Tawny in the face. Dana heard the fight and went to see what happened. She found Tawny covered in blood and missing one front tooth. Victoria had struck Tawny so hard that she had knocked out the tooth and split her lips. Victoria was apologizing, crying, saying she'd try harder. Her mother was shocked. She had never thought of Victoria as capable of anything like that. She told Victoria to go and get towels and a clean t-shirt. And then she quietly told Tawny she was calling the police. Tawny begged her not to. Victoria would be prosecuted as an adult and would face harsh punishment. Her mother was in a dilemma. She did not want to ruin Victoria's life by sending her to prison. She also wanted to respect the wishes of her daughter. Once again, Tawny's loyalty had taken priority over her own well-being. When her father saw that his daughter's front tooth was missing, he was devastated. Victoria chimed up that they had been attacked by a gang in Ogden. Tawny supported the story. They had already told the same thing to the doctor. This time her friends and mother were deeply distressed by the decision to stay in the relationship. No one could change her mind. Her friend Lacey said, "I thought, her front tooth is gone, there's no way she'll stay with Victoria now," but Tawny acted like nothing happened. Things were escalating fast, and no one had any idea just how unstable Victoria was becoming. In February of 2014, Victoria Mendoza posted a confession on Facebook. "I really am on my worst behavior." It was around this time that Tawny confided in her stepmother, Becca Murray. She said that Victoria would do something terrible if she left her. She took the abuse, the beatings, and lived in terror, afraid for her life, just to avoid something bad. She pretended to be happy and love her, but she confided in me how bad she wanted Victoria out of her life, and she tried on several occasions, with bad results. While Dana could see the extent of Victoria's obsessive and singular focus on Tawny, she felt stuck with Victoria, who had no job and nowhere to live. If she could just help Victoria get a job, things might start to improve. Tawny's grandmother helped pay for some of her tattoos to be removed. Dana, Casey, and his wife Becca helped Victoria find a job as a security guard. They paid for her uniform and badge. Meanwhile, 21-year-old Tawny had started at Salt Lake Community College and found a job as an accounting assistant. His daughter seemed happy, said Casey. They both had new jobs and were so excited, he said. Things were looking up, or so they thought. On October 17, 2014, Tawny's best friend Lacey invited them to go with her to a party with some friends on the opposite side of town. It was a typical party with drinking and some weed. During the party, Tawny's focus was on catching up with friends. Victoria wasn't happy. She wasn't getting enough attention. Victoria knew she was losing Tawny, and Tawny was becoming more adamant about being independent of Victoria. Victoria was losing control. At some point, she locked herself in the bathroom. When she came out, she demanded that all three of them leave. It was still early, but Tawny relented. With Victoria silent and brooding in the back seat, Tawny drove Lacey home. Before she got out of the car, she told both girls that she loved them and good night. Just a few hours later, Aaron Murphy received an alarming call from Victoria on Tawny's phone. Aaron said he normally didn't answer his phone after midnight, but she'd called several times and he decided to answer it. His roommate was awake. Victoria was distraught and not making sense. She hung up and then called again. Sensing the seriousness of the issue, Aaron put his phone on speaker and hit record on his phone.
Hey, where's Tawny?
She's dead. Yes, I absolutely killed someone. She was searching me to look out. You understand? I went crazy when I didn't need to do it, you know? And then I realized that's where the show was. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so scared. You have no idea how scared I am.
Victoria told him she had just killed someone. She was scared and had never been more scared in her life. She didn't mention Tawny's name until she was asked where Tawny was. There were no tears for Tawny, her loss, her stolen future. There was only fear and tears for Victoria. At some point, she said that Tawny was still breathing. Aaron urged her to take Tawny to the hospital before Victoria stated that it was too late. She was dead. It was her friend who called 911.
911, what is the address and city of your emergency?
I have to report a murder.
Okay, do you know who was murdered?
Yeah, her name's Tawny.
According to Murphy, Victoria told him, "I'm going to jail for a long time. I want you to tell people not to hate me." Her greatest concern at that moment was how people would perceive her after what she had done.
Father of a 21-year-old woman allegedly killed by her domestic partner is wondering tonight what went wrong and if something could have been done to prevent the tragedy.
I'm hearing little bits and stories from friends of Tawny that Tawny was living in fear of Vicky.
Police say Tawnee Baird was stabbed late Friday night in Ogden by Victoria Mendoza. She's now in jail. Tawny's dad says his daughter seemed happy. She was going to school and working as an accounting assistant, but police say an argument ended with tragedy.
We all loved her, but there was really something was not right.
Now, a friend of both the women told KSL today that Mendoza called him after the crime and admitted to killing Tawny.
And I just kept asking, what's going on, what's wrong? And I mean, she would hang up it happened about 6 times, but she'd hang up until finally she said, "I killed someone."
That's Aaron Murray. He said he could tell Mendoza was in shock on the phone. He says she asked him not to call the police, but he did after he learned where she was. He says friends are devastated about the entire situation. Mendoza was supposed to start a new job as a security guard tomorrow. She remains in the Weber County Jail.
Around 1 a.m. on October the 18th, 2014, deputies with the Ogden Police Department were dispatched to a parking lot on East Avenue in West Ogden, Utah, after receiving a 911 call about a stabbing. The parking lot was at the Ogden church that Victoria had attended growing up. Emergency and police personnel arrived to find an unexpectedly gruesome murder scene. Tawnee Baird was in the passenger seat of the car. She was covered from head to toe in blood. Victoria Mendoza had blood on her hands and face. She was visibly shaking. Victoria told police that she was driving on the freeway in Weber County on their way home from a party when a fight broke out with her girlfriend of 4 years. They were fighting over a man, she said. Victoria then had pulled off the interstate and into the parking lot. She had taken a 4-inch folding knife from her front pocket and began stabbing Tawny. Mendoza was arrested and booked into the Weber County Jail. She was charged with first-degree felony murder. Emergency personnel pronounced Tawnee Baird dead at the scene. She was just 21. Rumors spread fast, and by 6:30 a.m., news that something had happened to Tawny reached Lacey. Lacey called Dana early in the morning of October the 18th and asked her to check Tawny's room. Her room was empty. Tawny's car was not there. Lacey told her that she had heard something really bad had happened to Tawny. Just after 10 a.m., a police vehicle pulled up outside the Baird family home in Holiday. Dana was informed that her beautiful daughter Tawny had been killed, brutally murdered by the girl whom the family had welcomed into their home and helped in every way they could. The autopsy report revealed that Tawny had been stabbed 46 times by Victoria. She had wounds on her hands, forearms, face, head, neck, chest, and ear. Though none were fatal, Tawny died of shock and blood loss. If Victoria had called 911 and pressed down on her wounds, she may well have survived. During Victoria's February 2015 preliminary hearing, she pled not guilty. She claimed that Tawny had slapped her, pulled her hair, and that she was in fear for her life. Her defense attorney claimed that she was in a state of stress-induced anxiety. During one of several outbursts, Victoria claimed that everyone was against her. She said she was threatened by the victim's family. At another point, she said, "I'll just kill myself, then you don't have to worry about me." In a final display of self-pity, referring to the Baird family, she complained of hurt feelings. "Everything they've said is very hurtful to me." On November 10, 2015, in response to the overwhelming evidence against her, her lawyer suggested that she change her plea to guilty. Prosecutors said that it was unclear exactly what had happened in the car. While Victoria initially said she had been driving at the time of the stabbing, the stab wounds were on the right side of Tawny's body, suggesting that she was driving. A swipe of blood on the dashboard showed that at some point she'd moved from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. After she stabbed her girlfriend, Victoria had driven to the Ogden Church parking lot. She called her sister and Aaron Murphy. During her sentencing, Victoria Mendoza's sister, Cindy Spencer, took the witness stand. She testified that Victoria called her and said she had hurt Tawny. Cindy and her husband drove to the church parking lot where Victoria pointed to the car. She was freaked out, Spencer said, about her sister. Defense attorney Michael Studebaker asked who had the upper hand in the relationship. Spencer said Tawny, because Tawny had the car, the phone, and received money from her family. She also claimed that they used prescription drugs and marijuana, but only marijuana was found in their system. In Victoria's final statement, she had enough insight to state that she was the only monster here.
I'm the monster here.
But her words were empty. The truth slipped out as she struggled to sound remorseful, was revealed when she said, "I am suffering too." In a room full of people whose lives she had destroyed, she couldn't help but remind everyone that she, Victoria, mattered too. It had always been about Victoria. It would always be about Victoria. During the victim impact statements, her dad begged for a life sentence. Her aunt asked why Victoria should get one more day with the trees and the sun when Tawny could not. The court sentenced her to 16 years to life for the murder of Tawnee Marie Baird. The judge explained that his hands were tied. The murder wasn't premeditated. She is currently incarcerated in the Utah State Prison. Her first chance at parole is slated for October of 2039. Is this enough for someone who so savagely and impulsively took a life? On her release, will the jealous rages and impulse control have somehow magicked themselves away? Tawny's father, Casey, said, "I don't want the death penalty. I want her to suffer and have a lot of time to think about this. She's killing me too, ever so slowly. She should be tried again in court for the slow death of Tawny's dad and mom. I'm going to make sure she'll never again see the light of day. She took my one and only girl." In 2020, Victoria found herself a new audience on TikTok and YouTube while in prison. Someone from outside of the prison was videotaping her calls and posting them for her on the platforms. She thanked her followers for their support. The Utah State Prison removed the accounts. What's undeniable is that from the earliest days with Tawny, she showed a pattern of behavior that included attacks of uncontrollable rage, jealousy, a fundamental lack of empathy, and a total preoccupation with herself and her own needs. According to studies, 21% of female inmates in prison suffer from antisocial personality disorder, formerly known as sociopathy. People with this condition tend to show disregard for the rights of others. They lack remorse and display aggressive, deceitful, and manipulative behavior. Whatever is wrong with the brain of Victoria Mendoza, it drew an innocent girl into a trap, addictive, all-consuming, and obsessive love that quickly turned destructive, controlling, and violent. Tawnee Baird's only crime was to fall in love. She paid for it with her life. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.